think this message applies to anyone, not just someone who's autistic? Fair use.
To a lot have experienced the phenomenon that when you realize you're autistic, everything becomes more difficult. Your window of tolerance shrinks, your capacity drops. And this isn't because you're acting more autistic now. There are some reasons why, and there are some things you can do about it. My name is Sol Smith. I'm an autistic and ADHD life coach. I run the Neurospicy community, which is an online place for support for autistics and ADHDers all over the world. Number one, you're suddenly aware of the weight you've been carrying. It's like if you had been wearing a backpack full of bricks and suddenly you become aware that this backpack is full of bricks and it's not that it gets heavier, it's that you didn't really realize how unnecessary it was before. And now that you're aware of it, you just want to take the dang thing off. Your brain gets really busy analyzing all the ways that you've been stretching yourself to the limit and you can't unsee it. So it's not that you're unmasking is some kind of put on to prove to people that you're more autistic than they thought. It's that you stopped hiding how autistic you are. Number
Whether you're autistic or not, I think a lot, especially American culture, there's a very performative plastic smile culture, especially in the workforce where, customer service, it does make sense. You don't want someone hating their life giving you customer service. I've definitely experienced that in Europe when I traveled there, where like you were shocked when you got decent customer service. It was like they pretty much hated you. Like they wanted your money. They wanted to do the bare. It was kind of like the attitude was like, I'm barely here, so don't ask for too much kind of thing. It's kind of more real than we are here. Like they think you're a crazy man if you're smiling in Europe at random people. It's kind of like it makes you look naive and stupid, and that was a good experience for me to kind of see that. And, as I've gotten older, I have kind of the resting bee face more so now. I used to smile too much. I was one of those too happy people. And the rocks on your back that he talks about, it's you didn't realize this load you were carrying. I think I'm probably ADHD. I'm not diagnosed formally with anything. I'd be curious to go in and see what they said. Probably ADHD makes the most sense for me. Think my ex-wife thought I was autistic. Looking back, I have some attributes probably of that, but more ADHD as I've gotten longer in this life and researched things. And for people like me, especially when you kind of have the high energy and you're not accepted so easily into circles, I kind of feel like the court jester. If I try to be funny, no one laughs. And then when I'm like being somewhat serious, people think it's funny. So it's the mask is a weight that you're carrying. It's rocks in the back, and you realize you're performing for people. For me, a lot of times in conversation, even recently with an acquaintance, I was kind of forced to have a conversation with them about business. And we're kind of like, I would say we're friends. And when we were talking, it kind of there's awkward pauses. And since I'm an over talker generally, and they met me in that phase, people don't know how to react when it gets quiet. And especially for me, because I'm not uncomfortable with the silence anymore. And I don't want to be accused of over talking, but the old me kicked back in. I started talking. Oh, I don't want him to think I don't like him anymore. I don't, all those thoughts start running through my head. So I started keeping the conversation going. And afterwards, I just kind of felt stupid and sick to my stomach. Ugh, like I'm performing because I don't want people to see that I really have nothing to say. But bottom line, I think allowing other people to dictate who you are because you feel like you're not good enough, that you won't be likable if you don't act a certain way, that's dictated my life for 40 years up until probably the last 2 years, I really started changing that. Where I'm like the Alan Watts, the Alan Watts quote says something like, "You're not under any agreement to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. You can just change." Even me giving up poker, like people are just so shocked. Even my brother, when I first told him that I was giving up poker, he was like, "What?" Like, I've been playing poker for 20 years. And I'm just giving it up cold turkey. And it's been, about a month now. And it just, I think that's also kind of a ADHD-ish autism trait of just being able to turn that corner. Most people don't have the discipline for that. But, for me, as I'm, the Jungian 40-year-old, individuation stuff, Carl Jung talks about individuation. First 40 years on the planet are just research. Life begins at 40. It's really true because I'm just turned 40 in February, and you know, I'm kind of like I've seen the same stuff over and over. I see that the cycles repeat. Even like the job market right now, the crash that's happening right now. I lived through this in 2008. What we're going through in 2026 is the same thing I went through in 2008, 2009. So it's kind of like the same shit all over again. So you kind of get bored with, I think Charles Bukowski says something like, you get to a point where like you don't mind if you get taken off the planet because you're getting bored with life. You've seen the same things. I think by 40, you've seen, especially as a neurospicy type person, you're going to see the patterns more than the average person. And you start seeing the same patterns recirculating, just like right now with like, oh my God, the water, the drought, blah, blah, blah. But yet all of a sudden, it's like, oh, AI data centers, but they need water. So let's build them. Like they're building them in my hometown, even. It's like, it's like there's always this like environmentalist thing, but then they're going to fly in their private jet to Davos. There's always like this pendulum swing. And I feel like with the weight of carrying other people's expectations and trying to fit in, my parents do the opposite. They wear grubby clothes and like, they look, both of them very autistic how they act, and like they're very odd ducks and they think they're completely normal. I think that's the thing too. If you think you're neurospicy, you're high functioning, because the true autistic ADHDers that are 100% on the spectrum, on the like farthest gradient, they're not self-aware to know that they're off. They think that everyone else is off. So, for seeing them like kind of just live their life and not care what anyone thinks, it's a good thing. But I remember as like a early college student, maybe I was late high school, my mom was getting in trouble at work for working too much overtime. She was meeting with the union because they wrote her up, and she like was gonna dress like crap. And even I, at like 16 years old, I was telling, because I was seeing her in the morning to go, and I'm like, you can't wear that. She's like, what do you mean? Like it's just the meeting. I'm like, no, it's like you need a dress, like in a dress, in like something professional. She's a nurse, just wears scrubs normally, so she doesn't have to think about the clothing. But it was kind of shocking to me as like a, 40, 50-year-old woman. She's not aware of like the social cue that you can't show up in your like house clothes at a professional setting for a union meeting. Like it was, you know, that was like my first big tip off, I think. I mean, I always knew something was up, but that was the big tip off. But I forgot about that. It's funny that's coming up now. But in a way, I respect them. They live their life in that autistic, both of them in like a weird autistic way, but they live true to themselves. They're not trying to front for anyone. They're not trying to act a certain way. It can get them in trouble, and they can be very unlikable for that. And, part of I can be the same. I've realized over the years, I think one of my friends, she said something like, you should, get into politics so you'd be a good leader. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm very unlikable. And she's made the point that like she has the same issue, but when you're doing the work that people need done, like people will like you for that. They're just not so good in friendship. And I kind of realized that, like people either love or hate me. And, you know, the bulk will hate me anyway. So I've learned not to talk and not to have these. not to perform. I can't win. Even if I perform, it's never good enough. I think that's the main message I got from the first part. It's like you're carrying all these rocks in your backpack. You assume they're necessary to get through life. And obviously some of them are. Like at work, you need to have a certain level of decorum. You need to act in a neurotypical way. You can't just be your true authentic self during your 9 to 5 there. And I get that. I understand the neurotypical world where it's social lubrication and you have to get things done. You have to work around each other. I see the wisdom in neurotypical thought patterns. I get it. Um, and I also see the wisdom in kind of like the no emotion logic of the autistic, where it's like just the facts. I think there's something in like Eastern philosophy that there's logic and there's emotion, but in Eastern philosophy, they came up with a reason, which is you mix the logic and the emotions. You have to take a little bit of each to make a good decision. You can't just make 100% logical decision because people are still humans, they're still emotional. And you can't just make an emotional decision without logic, but you have to take into account people's emotions and logic. And that's called reason in Eastern philosophy. It's funny that this is pulling up right now because I forgot about this for many years. There's a saying in poker where like some guy was like, I've forgotten more poker than you'll ever know. And I kind of feel like that with spirituality in a lot of ways. Like it's some spiritual ego of mine where it's like I definitely have studied so much, I've forgotten more spirituality than some people even know. The problem with performing too, it becomes a muscle. It's muscle memory. It's like the muscle twitches. You're it becomes automated. My brother called this Jekyll and Hyde. My brother always comes up with good stuff where he noticed where I'm naturally not that passive of a person underneath it all, but over the years, over my Catholic private schooling and 17 years in corporate America, I was already more on like kind of the passive side in general. We're more on the passive side until we get pissed off. But I had turned off that pissed off element. The anger is a messenger emotion sort of thing. Anger will show you where there's a problem. In the past, I would feel anger and just react and blow up because I don't want to feel angry. I'm letting this out. Now you're making me angry kind of thing. I'm projecting my anger onto others versus I get the whole projection thing now where people are like, you're projecting. It's like the emotions you feel are your emotions, and you should use those to investigate as to why you're feeling them. And so now when someone makes me upset, instead of just blowing up at them, I investigate like why is this person triggering me? Is it something that is not sometimes it's not related to them. They may be saying something that you heard as a kid, your parents said to you, might be not anything at all, but sometimes they're doing something to you and you can't put it to words, but they're doing you wrong and you just know it. Your anger is coming up, but you haven't thought about it. You're just kind of in the moment. So usually I kind of find the best way to deal with that instead of putting on these performative masks. If someone's making you angry, like to that level, stop responding if it's a text message, get off the phone call if you're at work, end the conversation as quickly as possible. Even if you have to make an excuse, if they're like not stopping, a lot of people in corporate will be saying, oh, I got to run. I have a meeting starting soon. So, you just make up an excuse to get off the phone and or even in person. I see the neurotypical way of doing things actually. There's a lot of wisdom in both sides of this. Kind of like the reason thing with the emotions and the logic. I think they say with autism and neurotypical, it's like two ends of the spectrum from 0 to 10 kind of thing, like five being normal in a way, and then 10 being super neurotypical and 0 being super autistic. So everyone's kind of like on the gradient of some level. It's kind of like political leanings. Like you might be a moderate, but you're left leaning. You might be a moderate and you're conservative leaning, right? So it's kind of like people fall on these different ends of the spectrum. And that's kind of what I think drives a lot of the human conflict where we're masking for each other. I kind of feel like I think that's why neurotypical people don't do well with autistic people and vice versa. I kind of found throughout my life, I usually end up befriending the other ADHDers. And I usually find even sometimes kind of autistics, but the autistics are too low energy for me. So I end up hanging out with the ADHDers.
Two, your burnout becomes impossible to hide. Now, most autistics I know don't come to me and say, things were going so well, I figured I must be autistic. It's generally quite the opposite. Usually there is a pattern that has occurred to them throughout their life that makes them feel like they have really bad luck, like that they're cursed. They know that they're capable. They know that they're talented. They've been praised for their work or for their role in the family. But also, nobody has any patience for them at times. And everything drops out from under them. And usually you're already in burnout when you realize that you're autistic and you have been faking it to just prove yourself even more. Number three, not only
I think this is true when you've been masking, whether you're autistic or not, in your life, if you've been, you know, being friendly to someone that you don't actually like, especially in the workplace, I find that's kind of the most common place where we're forced to be fake. You like hate your boss's guts, but you need to earn income, and there's no point to confront them of, like it's kind of like that dumb thing, people laughing at a joke that's not funny. It's like you develop the fake laugh. Like my brother says, the Jekyll and Hyde element where in corporate, I he called me out for it. You have two personalities. You have your work personality, like that customer service voice, and kind of this passive personality, and then there's the real you. But you get so used to drowning out who you actually are. You keep switching from Jekyll and Hyde. It's like the werewolf at night kind of thing, but you're a normal guy during the day. You keep you the lines start getting blurred. And that definitely happened to me. I became even when my last girlfriends called me out for it, where it was like she said something like, "Oh, like you're not taking enough initiative," kind of thing, like in the relationship. And I said something to her, which was true. I was like, well, honestly, I work with a bunch of women. I work at a women-owned company and I've been in corporate for 17 years. So it's like I've gotten used to like you can't take initiative without getting in trouble. Like you at work, like you can't like it doesn't male initiative doesn't really do well in kind of the corporate culture, especially in California. And she understood, but it was a good moment. And I talked to my brother about the Jekyll and Hyde thing. It's like it is true. My ex-wife had similar complaints. So I was really in the passive personality type when I was with her because I've just been trying to make it in corporate. So you're kind of willing to be whoever they want you to be just to get those promotions, get to move up. Like I was willing to kind of morph into something I wasn't just to continue. And now I'm unwilling to morph for anyone. Even at work now, I have to do those passive moments now, especially because this company they met me as a passive guy, and I'm not really passive. And I'm kind of who I was before I got beaten to submission. I was as a child, I was pretty aggressive as a younger sort of child, like second grade or third grade. I was very aggressive, very male, and it got beaten out of me in the Catholic school system. And I became a nice, well-behaved, polite little boy that all the teachers liked and like kind of thing. I was teacher's pet to some degree because I stayed quiet in class. I was, it's kind of funny, like returning to who I truly am. And people don't like it. People don't like when you're not the comfortable version that they're used to. I still remember one time with my parents, my son has special needs, and like they were trying to tell me how to parent him, and they know nothing of a special needs child. And they can be really infuriating where they think they're right. They have no idea on something. And so I literally took my son, packed everything up, and drove all the way home, like 2 hour and a half home. And especially my mom wants to see my son. So it was like ever since then they respected me because I think it was the first time they viewed me as an adult where I had my own agency. Because I always used to joke when you go home to visit your parents, they usually treat you like you're 10 to 20 years younger than you are. So if you're 40 years old, they're going to treat you like you're 20 still. Like you're still their baby to them. It's hard for them to treat you like a true adult. So I think in that moment when I pulled that, and I had to do something similar years later, they started realizing, oh, I'm an adult. And same thing in your personal relationships with my ex-wife, especially lately, where I'm kind of like being who I naturally am, where I'm especially unlikable because I'm just going to tell people what I need and a kind of thing. I'm not going to bend the knee to anybody. It kind of have that fighter personality that I've tucked away, for years, and it's kind of the warrior spirit's coming out again. And same with my ex-wife. It's like she's realizing, I think, that as I even said to her last time we argued, it was like, I'm not mad. I'm just stating what I need. Versus in the past, I would just blow up at her, post-divorce kind of stuff when we're having custody issues kind of thing. Versus now it's like I just state what I need. And and I feel like introversion is autism gradient. The more introverted you are, the more likely you're somewhere on the spectrum. A lot of people can't admit that to themselves that they're on some portion of the spectrum. I think my friend also gave me great advice that when I was telling her about, my dating life and this and that, like who I've been dating, and she's like, she said something like, anyone that's dating you isn't neurotypical. And like I joked, well, my ex-wife thinks she's completely neurotypical, and she's like, she's not. And I'm like, when she said that, I kind of started looking over the relationship and how she acts in certain ways. She's she's definitely not. She's If five is normal, she's like a 4.5, like 4.75. She's almost, but there's a little bit off, tiny bit off. Like leaning a little bit that way. I'm probably more like a 4 or 3.75. I'm more off than normal. So it's more noticeable to people. And I think as a not neurotypical, I think the more neurotypical you are, the more the masking doesn't have an effect in a way because you don't need to do it because you naturally fit in. You have those kind of inherent social skills. It's like an instinct. It's like a fish that swims up river when it's time to spawn. They naturally know what to do. I've always felt like I'm an alien on this planet, and I've been studying humans and I've learned their ways. Like I'm an honorary human, I'm actually an alien. Understood humanity. I've never understood the wars and I've never understood the logic of how things operate and just a lot of social customs. I've either eventually understood the wisdom of it, or I think they say if you're not neurotypical, you're like 30% behind, 33%. You're like a third behind everyone else developmentally in terms of social skills, Indian house kind of thing. And I realized like me and my brother talking about we both are kind of later in life doing the rebellious teenager thing. We're both in our 40s basically, and we're both, I'm smoking, he's drinking kind of thing. Like we're doing we're doing things that high schoolers or teenagers more did, and we're doing it late. Like it's like the tattoo. It's like teenagers are getting tattoos rated 18 or 21 or whatever, and we're kind of delayed development. We're doing it later than normal. And that's also too, we were forced to kind of live a more of a sheltered life, friends that are back from other colleges and stuff. But you start seeing the patterns with people where like people are just like a season. They're gonna be in your life. It's a beginning, middle, and end. Like you're gonna be friends with someone. It could be a lifetime, it could be a year, it could be 20 years, it could be 10 years. Side the poker. Very interesting. But
Only does your brain stop suppressing the autism and the burnout. It stops suppressing its needs. Suddenly you're aware of the fact that you haven't been looking out for yourself. that you've been looking out for others and using that as a surrogate for looking out for yourself because it prevents you from being rejected.
That's been my problem for many years, what he just said. You've been looking out for others as a surrogate for looking out for yourself. You're afraid of rejection. I've been acting a certain way since a young child because my natural personality is unlikable. I'm too quiet. I don't have much to say. And as my brother would say, he's a short guy. I'm 5'6.5". Like I have the short guy charm. You have to learn if you're ever gonna get a girlfriend as a short man, you have to have personality. So you learn to be a conversationalist. And my brother's kind of how I used to be, where you say so little, people think you're weird. And I already didn't want to get rejected for being weird, so I went the other route of over talking, like being the court jester, being friendly. And I realized, yeah, it's all about rejection because now, as I've been dropping away friends and acquaintances, I'm just shedding like a snake shedding the skin. Like I'm molting. I don't need all this. If you don't like me, that's fine. We don't have to be. I'm not performing for you. Or sometimes it's not. I feel like you you and someone else, is not that you don't like each other, but you're just not on the same wavelength. Like for me, a lot of the poker people, you know, they're really focused on worldly things. There's always betting on something. It's like they're very worldly. I'm like the opposite. And a lot of them are very Christian because the area I live in is super Christian. So me being kind of like a Hindu Buddhist Eastern Star City type, I've I've learned to never talk about, you know, politics, religion. You can only talk about these things, abortion, those sort of things, if you're on the same page already with people. Like someone has to reveal that they're a conservative first, and then you could think you're a conservative kind of thing. Like you don't want to say you're a conservative and they're a liberal, and then you're going to get an argument. So it's kind of like with religion, I kind of feel it's the same way. That's why people like the congregations. You go into a church, everyone's kind of believing the same thing. You're not going to get in an argument. I've actually been freeing though by realizing I've been performative. It's easy to drop away people, especially, have a special needs son. I am pursuing a spiritual path. I'm trying to, get my life right. Spending time just hanging out like that 70s show down the street, just like hanging out just to hang out. There's very few people I enjoy doing that with.
It prevents you from feeling lonely. Now that you have to look out for yourself, it is very exhausting because you see all the places where things are hard, where you need more than what you're getting. We need to move from proving ourselves to protecting ourselves. We need to protect our time, protect our energy, and begin to apply ourselves where we want to and address our own needs. Just about every like
That was key for me to realizing you have to protect yourself from other people, not because you harm, but in social interactions, often someone wants something or needs something from you. So there's an agenda in place. I realized why in corporate, I used to view a lot of people as like assholes because they kind of were just all about themselves and they didn't care if they screwed you over. I kind of get it now as I'm 40. If I look back, most of those assholes I viewed in corporate were 40 plus because you know how it is. You sacrifice for these people and then your personal life is ruined because you're not home on time for dinner with your kids. I dealt with that where you're you're giving so much that it's actually affecting your life. You don't have time to get a freaking haircut. You're not brushing your teeth enough because you're so tired doing a crappy job, right? It gets to a point where like you've allowed them to wear you down. The whole work-life balance thing. Um, I take that a lot more seriously now because I'm older. I don't have as much energy as I did in my 20s. In my 20s, I could abuse myself and work really long hours. Now it's like I'll be burnt out for months. Like if I'm working these crazy shifts, there was a time when I was like after 2, 3 months of not having to work crazy, like I came back to myself and I could start working hard again. It's kind of like you don't even realize how beat up you are.